get this one going. As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dave Iverson?
Here.
Brooke Moore?
I'm here.
Chantal Murphy?
Here.
Meg Browers?
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Haley Cook?
Here.
Ken Bogran?
Present.
Tucker Holland?
Coming at you from 16 Broad.
Oh, yeah. Vicky, I see that you just joined us. Can you hear us okay? She's connecting the audio, so we'll give her a minute. Hi, Vicky. Can you connect? Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Great. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
No, not at all. I'm just getting started.
Okay.
Good afternoon. This is an open meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For the meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening via video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware people may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noticed. The public is encouraged to follow along using the agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We'll turn to the first item on the agenda. Permit me to cover ground rules for effective, clear conduct of our business. We'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, we'll go down the line of members each to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes for any responses. Please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. For members who wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. For members, for items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to the members of the public who have joined via Zoom. Members who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote will be taken and conducted by roll call. So with that, Haley, can you help me? I believe I have the most up-to-date agenda in front of me with the packet. Is there a way on the first page for me to identify it?
It should be, yes. So the most updated meeting should have posting number T840 on the top of the agenda.
T840. Okay, great. So I am looking at the correct version. Thank you for
That's the updated.
Thank you for the moving target and keeping us up to speed.
Sure. Before, just real quick, I see somebody on here that has a phone number. I know we have to change them to their name, and I can't message them to ask them their name.
So the phone number is 781-760-5655. So if you could identify yourself in.
So I'll take bets. I'm betting it's Dave Arminetti.
Perhaps.
Outside chance, it's Andrew Burek. Dave or Andrew, whoever's the phone number is.
I asked them to.
It's Dave Arminetti. I just
Okay, great.
typed it into
Thank
my
you.
phone. So
I'm sorry,
No, all
Mr.
good.
Chair and Tucker, it's Dave Arminetti.
no problem, Dave. We figured you out.
I'm on the boat, so I'm going to mute out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, sorry.
Haley, are there any last minute edits, changes, removals, carryovers on the agenda before we approve it?
Yeah.
There's just one point that I need to make. There is an unexpected item that came up unexpectedly. So we changed the agenda, and that's the item with respect to 14 Somerset Road. And so the agenda, as you have in front of you, has all the information on it that it needs. And it, because it was unexpected at the time, that's why we were able to change and make the adjustment to the agenda to add it to the agenda.
Thank you, Ken. And Haley, back to you.
Yeah, and we also have Orange Street similar, it was added to the updated agenda. We have a one pager. It's just recapping notes from last week. So that was added back in as well under the same thing. And the other thing is when we get to minutes, I'll have a note, but we can do the agenda first.
Okay. With that, looking to the board for a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So moved.
Anybody? Okay, from Brooke, a second.
Second.
Second from Dave by roll call, Chantal Murphy.
Aye, and
Yes.
Dave is, Vicky's now Dave, and Dave still has his number, just so you guys know. On the
Okay.
names.
I'll fix that. I don't know why it does that sometimes.
Aye.
Thank you, Dave. Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye.
Feel like-
Next, I
Are you trying to hypnotize us with these green circles in your eyes?
bet not better. Yeah. I was trying to light my face. My room is backlit. So anyhow, the approval of the minutes from 9/13/22. Are there any edits, comments, questions, changes? Rima?
Yeah, I had an edit and one of the discussions, Haley referred to Tucker as Tucker Carlson, not as Tucker Holland. So she fixed that.
Sorry, Tucker, it's been changed.
That was that was a favorable comparison.
I was thinking of wearing a bow tie today, but
Perfect.
Oh, boy.
I also asked that Haley add the comment that Ann Cuspa added that the first-time home buyers course is available online and can be taken at any time.
Thank you, Rima. So look for a motion with Rima's edits to the minutes for approval.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Second from Rima by roll, Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
I wasn't there.
Oh, thank you. So that's an abstain. Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. Public comment for items not otherwise on the agenda. We have a handful of members of the public. I'll look for a show of hands if anybody has any questions, comments. Seeing none, we'll move to item number 5 on the agenda, CFAP application at 34 Chuck Hollow Road. Who wants to present this? Tucker, Haley?
well, Anne is here. I think she may be the best person.
Oh, okay, great. Ann, can you help us through this one? Not to put you on the spot, but
Sure thing, Ann Kispa, Housing Nantucket. I mean, pretty straightforward here. It's a seller, Leanne Bell, who would like to take advantage of the Covenant Information Assistance Program. So I don't know if you have any questions or.
my only question is on septic capacity and original lot size. I'm just curious how it would be broken down or.
I don't have that information. It's not really part of this application. So what is your question? I can get back to you.
I guess how big is the original lot? While I'm talking, I'm pulling it out. And then how big will the,
So I can
Go
speak
ahead.
to, or Dave better than I can.
I think it's a 3 acre lot, I believe.
oh, it's huge. It's almost 5 acres.
Oh,
Yeah.
5 acres, yeah.
Yeah, it's 4.75. Okay, great.
But he's
Yeah.
restricted on his footprint by the tertiary standards, so I think he can rebuild 900 square feet, but yeah, it's this was a long time coming. I think that it was helped by our last year's ATM warrant articles to happen, I believe. So this is a good thing. It just it took a little while to get going.
Yeah, no, this is a great lot for last year's meeting and conversation. I was curious if it was one of the half acres that would be small or if it's bigger.
Oh, it's a giant, yeah, it's one of the big
Yeah,
ones.
Yeah, it's a huge lot. With that, is there a motion or any continued discussion?
I'll move approval.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the
Second,
application, second from Dave Iverson. Vote by roll call. Dave Iverson,
aye.
John Tom Murphy,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye.
Thank you.
Moving to Nantucket Meadows third lottery. It's exciting to say that. Discussion and potential approval. Who shall I look to lead this conversation? Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is a fairly straightforward item. The folks who handle the monitoring and lottery for the 80% units SEB housing works with Richmond, and they have requested that they be able to conduct a third and final lottery for the 80% homeownership units that would extend the period of completion will extend out over the next 12 to 14 months. And so they have already discussed this request with DHCD. DHCD is fine with doing one lottery for all units within that period, and they were simply looking for our concurrence.
Thank you, Tucker. Any questions from members of the board? Brooke?
Just to clarify, they're going to be building the units over a longer period of time, but they want to make the selection and have it the same weighting, the same list for a more extended period of time than normal. It's, what is it, usually a year?
Yeah, I mean,
Before they
they're
have to do another lottery.
the representation is that they're going to come online in the next 12 to 14 months. So a little longer than normal. But DHCD is okay with that timing.
Okay, thanks.
Tucker, is there a number that, when the lotteries happen, do they go just specific to the number of units? That seems like a long period of time for people's circumstances to change. And do they lottery back up people on the list, or how does that work in an environment that circumstances are changing quickly financially?
Yeah. I mean, Anne may be able to add to this, but I mean, generally when they're doing the lottery, you know, they're keeping, there's a long list of folks selected in the order, and they're, you know, keeping the, you know, backup folks, if you will, for situations such as you're describing. And Anne can, I don't know if you want to add any color to that, Anne.
That's right. And like, for example, at Sachem's Path, all the names in the lottery are pulled. And then based on preferences for, say, household size, then you get bumped up in priority. And then if, say, you know, in 12 months, when you're ready to execute a purchase and sale, and number one on the list has gone off island or whatever, they don't want to buy a house, then you go to number two.
Okay. Is my only follow-up question, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor this one, but what is the ability for people in this scenario to rate lock and capture financing for any longer period of time and going this far out?
No,
None, Anne?
no.
Okay. All right.
But the bank, I mean, from what I understand, it's like 45-day standard rate lock.
Okay. I'm just curious if there's a way to help that situation. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts or comments? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion on the item. Tucker, can you describe to the group what the action item that we're looking for on this?
I can just say that, DHCD has agreed to a third and final lottery that would include all remaining affordable units. So if the board were to vote to be in agreement with DHCD's view and approval on this matter, I think that would be sufficient.
Does anyone want to make that motion or continue conversation? Rima?
Yeah, I move that we approve the third lottery for Nantucket Meadows along with DHCD's approval, in line with DHCD's approval.
Second.
And a second from Dave by roll call. Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, we'll move to item 7, which was the unsurfing. Ken explain this, or Haley did. 135, 137 Orange Street and 12 and 12R Bartlett Road RFPs for discussion.
Yes, so we just put together a one-pager that's in the packet, going over everything, a summary of everything, because it was a long conversation about those 2 properties. And Tucker and I wanted to just make sure that that list looks right and that there wasn't anything that people had in addition to that list, and if they did, to add that now.
Just to add to that, so from the, Haley, if you could mute for a second. If there were items coming out of the last discussion, which was just last week, that are going to take longer time in terms of incorporating into the RFP. So we wanted to simply, put the summary in front of folks. Perhaps over the course of the last week, there are additional thoughts that people have that they would like to add to the list, and we certainly would welcome those. Otherwise, we are planning to come to the October meeting with the call it fully updated RFP. And you don't have to add all thoughts today. They can also come subsequent by email or what have you, but we wanted to give the opportunity.
Thank you, Tucker. Anyone want to add anything not included on the lists for today? Okay, seeing nobody jumping at the opportunity, I think we'll just carry these on a future agenda, Haley, as we refine to next month.
Yep.
So that brings us to 14 Somerset Road. We have an action item. I will turn this over to Vicky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this before you is an approval for the acquisition of 14 Somerset Road by the trust. You're purchasing the property from the Somerset Nominee Trust, and the sales price was $1,795,000. And before you, there's a deed, which I've reviewed and approved of its form. There's an acceptance of the deed, which would be signed by the trust. And then there is an assignment and assumption of the lease that's currently in place on the property. And there is a settlement statement. And if you look at the settlement statement, I just wish to point out that the trust received a $50,000 credit for repairs that are going to need to be made to the property for the roof, and then also for other repairs. And then there's also a $5,000 credit for the oil tank on the property. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
My quick question on the oil tank credit is that it just needs to be replaced and it's on back order, Ken?
That's correct.
it's a single line presently
Yeah.
that needs to be a double.
Anybody else have questions in general? Dave?
Just for my, I don't remember, but that lease runs out the first of the year, is that right?
No, the lease runs out the end of the month, and I am in the process of negotiating with the 3 tenants in there to do 3 separate leases, extending them for a 1-year period as we figure out how we're going to manage all of the different properties that the town is now having available for housing for employees.
Great, perfect, thank you.
Anybody who wants to help is welcome.
So I have a comment for after the sale. At what point do we want to put this property into a covenant lot creation program opportunity? And, it seems like we need to get through the leases first, Ken, but.
Well, we got to get through the leases, and then I got to fix up the rest of the property first. So give me a break.
Yeah, I've just put an asterisk on it for you that thinking about that one moving forward. So, yes, Vicky?
And so the other question, I think this is for Ken's consideration and for all of you, is the town going to be leasing these properties directly? Was that the intent? Or is the trust going to, because these are going to be municipal employees, is my understanding. So it would seem that there may be a need to have a lease running to the town as we have considered, and then the town being the lessor.
Yeah, that was the plan with respect to it, simply similar to what we did with 8A 30 acres.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no. We part of what Libby has challenged Tucker and I to do is to come up with a strategy in terms of how we manage the 16 or 18 different properties that the town has in various stages of use relative to employee housing.
Okay. So when we negotiate those leases, we just want to make sure that we're going to set this up so that the town is going to be the lessor.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Brooke?
Is there a form to the motion, Vicky, that we through you, Mr. Chair?
No one asked me for one, but you'll want to authorize the approval and execution of the trust purchase of 14 Somerset Road and the execution of the acceptance of deed, assumption of lease, and the settlement statement and any other documents.
Okay, and authorize the chair and vice chair to sign, or do we need?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, so I would make that motion between what Vicky said and what I added.
Thank you, Brooke and Vicky. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rima. Vote by roll. Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. Okay. That's my agenda. Violet Place acceleration review and potential action approval. So Tucker, do you want to start this, or shall I go right to Dave or Andrew since Dave's on the boat?
We can do it either way. If Dave would like to talk, also Vicky is going to need to address things at one point.
Okay. So Dave or Andrew, I'd like to open to you and then come back to Vicky.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Board members, it's Dave Arminetti, Director of Real Estate Development for Richmond. Appreciate the time and the board taking this up. I do apologize if there's a little bit of background noise. We're just leaving Island this afternoon. We're here mainly to answer any questions or add any more input that the board might need. I think the documents, Attorney Burek and Attorney Marsh have worked together closely, as has been the case before, to get these in good shape. And we appreciate Tucker and Ken's leadership on this, and certainly the board's leadership to move this forward, and look forward to getting the green light, hopefully from you, and move forward, get building permits and get these built and important milestone to get the town this next segment of safe harbor and additional units on the shy list. And as we always talk about with you and the board, continue to move forward on our mission here and put more heads in beds. So we look forward to it, and we appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, Dave. Tucker?
Yeah, I want to thank Dave and Andrew and Phil and the Richmond team. I just would add a little color to, what Dave said. The board will recall that we worked collaboratively, very effectively in the wildflower acceleration project, which allowed Richmond to move at a much faster clip than otherwise would have been possible, and get folks, under roofs. There are 24 Nantucket households now under roofs today as a result of that collaboration. This is really kind of supersizing that, and will allow for 48 Nantucket households to be housed within approximately the next 16 months, again, at a much faster clip than otherwise. And in addition, as was the case with wildflower, there is deeper and more extensive income restriction than otherwise would have been the case. In this particular instance, there will be units restricted at 70%, 80%, 120%, and 110% and 120%. So it is much more substantial than the 12 units at 80 would have been, again, in the absence of this collaboration. So I think this is a good thing all the way around. And again, we continue to enjoy the good working relationship that we have had with the Richmond team.
Thank you, Tucker. Any questions for Tucker on that? Okay. Vicky, Brooke, do you have a question on that for?
I'd just like to reiterate what Tucker said about the income levels on these. I think it's really interesting. The Richmond group is probably the holder of more information about the very specific levels of need and income levels in our community because of the depth of the application process and waiting list that they keep, and that they came to us and with these particular income levels reflects the areas of need that they're seeing among the many applicants that they have for rental housing. So I just want, for the public's information, I just wanted to reiterate that point, that our goal is always to create units at a variety of income levels so that people are not excluded because they make a little too much over a particular income level, that there are other levels of opportunity in the community for rental housing. So.
Thank you, Brooke. Okay, Vicky.
So I can provide a little bit more detail as to the structure of this transaction. It's going to be a total loan at the present time of $5,950,000, of which $2,380,000 will be turned into a grant upon the certification of these units. The income levels, so there's going to be 24 units that are going to have affordability levels, as we've noted, of 6 have been reduced from 80% to 70%. And then there's 6 that are going to be 80%, 6 that are 110%, and 6 that are 120%. So there's now 24 units that are going to have these affordable AMIs on them. And basically the transaction is structured so that we're going to be dispersing the funds at different times during the course of the development here. And there's still a couple of blanks in these documents. One is for the interest rate and one is for the disbursement schedule itself. And so we're waiting for bond counsel to approve of this, as well as Brian Turbot to issue, to advise us of the interest rate and the disbursement schedule. Otherwise, the documents are fairly similar to what we did for Wildflower, quite frankly. So do you have any questions?
Vicky, what's the term?
The term is 50 years.
Thank you. And that's an assignable note?
Yes.
Anybody else have questions? So Vicky, with the items that aren't yet defined, is this an actionable item for us today? Or would you like us to take action without those identified?
I think that given the fact that those are the only two issues, and that I think that if you're amenable to moving forward, I think that I would ask that you take a vote subject to approval, an agreement on the interest rate and the disbursement schedule between the trust and Richmond. Yes.
Are there any members that have questions on the action item or would look to make a motion? Rima?
I'll make a motion that we approve and execute the MOU, the grant and loan agreement, and any other documents related once they are approved by finance and ready to go, and to authorize the chair or vice chair to sign.
Tucker?
Just if we can add finance and town council.
Finance and town council.
Second,
Okay, so motion made by Rima and seconded by Dave. Vote by roll call. Dave Iverson,
aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan. I'm going to abstain. Okay, moving on to 7 Amelia Drive RFP review and approval. Is there any conversation, comments? Rima?
Yeah, I was trying to go through it quickly before the meeting and I saw, it's being done on a ground lease, correct? Through the chair to Vicky. And then further on in the RFP, it said something about the town conveying the property to the developer, which is like, well, what are we doing?
So you're correct. I haven't put a final version in front of you. I do apologize. But I have gone through most of this document, and the intention was that this be done, excuse me, as a ground lease. So it needs to be, the RFP clearly needs to be cleaned up. The one thing I just want to confirm with all of you is the ownership of this property. So the deed that is attached to this RFP is in the name of the town, acting by and through its board of selectmen, and not the trust. Is that the understanding, that this property is town-owned property?
I don't remember, Vicky, to answer that question, how it was defined at the time of the purchase, but the effort was a joint effort to be able to provide access and housing units. The trust, again, I don't remember allocation of funding for it at the time.
The funding was, as I recall, in effect, 1/3 came from
CPC.
Well, no, 1/3 for the total, because it was one lot that includes the roadway, and 1/3 of the total monies came from the DPW or the town, formal in that way, and 2/3 of the money came from CPC dollars, through the trust.
Right. So right now, the deed, just so we all understand, the deed is in the name of the town, and the select board have custody of that property, and not the trust. So I don't know if it was ever intended that you were going to acquire this property.
It seems like a step that would be unnecessary if the select board would just issue the RFP,
Right,
but.
that's pretty much what I was getting to, Brian.
I think,
We can certainly, you can certainly put in the terms that you want, and then we're gonna, excuse me. And then you're going to need to have the select board approve and issue the RFP on this.
great. Rima, I saw Rima's hand go up real quick.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we should formally carve the lot, the building lot off of the original lot, which included the roadway, and either, have that conveyed to the trust to own or not. But, it should probably somehow be separated from the roadway lot.
So the roadway will be laid out. It's, that's gonna happen. Unfortunately, the final plan hasn't been done yet, but so the roadway will be created, and then the balance of the lot is remaining. So there's a 7,355 square foot lot that will remain. So we don't necessarily need to carve it out any further, because the roadway will already be created once the plan has been finalized and recorded. The question is the ownership. And so right now, the ownership of this property is in the name of the town, in the custody of the select board. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Brooke, as our select board representative, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is how the property for Tacoma Green is held too, right? It's in the name of the town, so the trust is basically, in my opinion, acting on behalf of this, in concert with the select board here. And so really, it's just a formal ratification of our recommendation from the trust to the select board of what the RFP should look like. And then I think it's a bit moot as to who owns the land, because it's going to be a ground lease for a long period of time. And so having the lot under, it makes sense to have it under the ownership of the town, because the town owns the road. So I don't, have a problem with that. I mean, we're coordinating Tacoma Green, through the trust on behalf of the select board, even though they own the property. So it's kind of 6 to 1, half dozen the other, unless there's a compelling legal reason to have us own it and have the lease in our name. And I would imagine, I can't speak for my fellow board members, but I would imagine that they would follow the recommendation of this board.
Well, this is a step further than Six Fairgrounds, because we provided the dough. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a collaboration. And I think just, perhaps when it's presented to the select board, being clear about that, and that select board basically authorizes the trust to manage the development process and so forth, just officially grants that authority, I think would cover it. Would you say, Vicky?
I think that there's no reason that the trust certainly needs to be the owner of the property. It can continue to be in the name of the town and have the same outcome. And certainly with the trust's overview of the project, if you're granted input into developing the project, certainly there's no downside for the town to be the owner of the property. I mean, they already are, so we don't have to actually go through another step to do that. So if the select board is agreeable to doing that, then I think that's certainly an acceptable way to proceed. I just raised the question when I started looking at this, that we've got, different entities here, and I want to make sure too that the select board will be on board to doing the ground lease rather than selling. I would assume that rather than selling the property off.
So So with this conversation and this commentary, it seems as like we either need to make an approval based subject to the select board's agreement of the RFP, or take it there, have them approve it, come back, and then we vote on it. Go ahead, Brooke.
Let's get this thing moving. Let's do
Okay.
it subject to final approval by the select board, then we can start the process. Then it can get on our agenda, get approved while it's being finalized and prepared for distribution, so we don't lose any time.
So
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, Vicky. No,
So there's still some work that needs to be done to this RFP in order to be able to get it ready to go over to the select board. So I would say their next meeting, are you planning on taking it in executive session, Brooke, do you think, or?
Since we're doing this in an open meeting, I can't imagine why we would need to do it in executive session.
Okay, so their
But
next-
that's not my call. That's the chair's call, obviously.
Okay, so your next meeting is not for,
Isn't there one next week?
yeah, I'm not sure. Do you think that this, I'm not sure this is going to be ready for Friday or Thursday.
There's.
So
Select-
Vicky, you said you had some things that you still need to do to it. I guess
Yeah,
when
so-
would they be ready? I guess?
Well, so I had some questions actually for all of you. So perhaps you want to just give me some of your input. For instance, this doesn't have a site tour in here. Did you not want to offer one to these people, or is that something that you just was an oversight, or?
let's offer one.
Okay, all right, that's easy enough then. Do you want to?
So just with the site it's fine to offer a site tour. I think it was not included in the same way that it was included with Six Fairgrounds and with what we're doing with Orange Street and Bartlett Road, because those are larger sites potentially attracting an off-island developer. This is a local site that is maybe 2 or 3 units that I don't think we're going to attract an off-island developer to. So it was intentional not to do a site tour, but we certainly can offer one.
I appreciate the difference, Tucker, and how you kind of looked at them and acknowledged, but I think the consistency of offering from one to the next is worthwhile carrying over, because we don't know who we don't know.
That's fine.
And the other thing is, because you have that roadway issue, it may help people to come and actually see, rather than if you're from off island just by chance, it'll allow you to actually see the site.
Yeah, I think the concern in the prior, with the prior is it added time, importantly to the process, but if we don't see it adding any time here, that's fine.
So the affordability question, I think we talked about it a little bit the last time, but I just want to be clear as to what you're looking to do here. I know obviously we want everything to be on the shy list. And so the last, when we did Six Fairgrounds, for instance, we just had at least 25% of the units have to be rented, obviously, for 80% or under. And then when we spoke last time, you were thinking of trying to get something more restricted. So is there a level that you are targeting, or you want to just leave it vague? I just want to make sure that I get the right affordability levels that you're trying to target here.
Right. They have to be at 100% or below, all of them, because it was funded with CPC dollars, and that's a CPC restriction.
Okay.
I'm correct there, right?
Part of it was funded with CPC money, not the whole thing.
All of our portion was 100% CPC money.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the house, to purchase the portion for housing, it was 100% CPC money. So
Okay.
they all have to be at 100%.
Or less.
Yes.
Which, that's fine. I just didn't know whether you wanted to go below that, like target specific
Oh.
affordable levels, or just leave it at that. Which is the way this is drafted right now.
You're on mute, Brooke.
One has to be at 80% or below in order for them to be shy listed.
Right.
Wait, if it's home ownership, they all have to be 80% or below, now that I'm thinking out loud. And if it's rentals, one of the three has to more, at least 25% have to be at 80% or below, right? So
Yes.
as
we do need-
clarification.
Okay.
Yep. So thanks for persisting.
Yeah. It gets confusing when you have to analyze where the money comes from, how many units need to be at certain levels in order to qualify. Okay. The other thing was, the last time we were talking to is about unit types. And do you want to leave it that, I mean, we're not targeting a specific type of unit, I guess is what I'm looking for here. I know in the other projects, we were maybe looking to try to get maybe a little bit more 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, but this project here, not just studio, 1-bedroom.
Go ahead, Brooke.
2.
So I don't know whether they would be required for all of them to be shy listed, what the 3-bedroom requirement is on a development this size,
Yeah,
but per DHCD.
I'd look
But-
into that then for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I would say maximum flexibility on the part of the developer. It's such a small lot. I'd like
Yeah.
to see them be able to be as creative as possible. And meet the shy list guidelines.
So acquisition. So we're going to be ground leasing this property for a 99-year ground lease. Are we doing it for $1 a year? Like we've done for 6 Fairgrounds then? And is there an initial lease payment that you're looking for? I mean, in 6 Fairgrounds, for instance, we charge $1,000 a unit for the town's initial upfront expenses. Obviously, this is a smaller project. I don't know if you want to have an initial lease payment that's due to cover the town's initial expenses or not. Like I said, it's not a very big project, but.
I don't see any initial payment other than the $1 a year personally.
Is there any restriction with respect to having basement units here? Because I know that we had that discussion and I don't remember how that got resolved.
So there's nothing in here, and that was another question that I had for you, was do you want basement storage in these units?
Ken, if I recall the conversation, it was that if somebody was utilizing the basement, they could, but our preference was above ground unit creation.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay.
But I don't think we were looking to restrict it in any way. Dave?
Yeah, I just think no basement units is fine, but we should definitely have a basement for storage, for laundry, for whatever.
Dave, if I could caution that we don't restrict the RFP with that language, thus allowing people to present whatever they can present. If some portion of the unit is in the basement, even if it is just storage,
Okay.
versus saying no basement unit, then that could eliminate the flexibility of design. I don't know if we award a higher scoring criteria for majority of space above grade or something like that.
We have final say on the design anyway, correct?
Brooke?
I think we should add a criteria, an evaluation. We have to be careful because if we get too much into designing, we run into 30B issues. So I don't want to cross that line, Vicky, but I do think, can we set a criteria that says the larger percentage of living space that's above grade is at advantageous or something along those
Yeah,
lines, or is
yeah.
that too close?
No, we can certainly add that as a criteria, similar to, I mean, obviously, we're going to need to have like, and I know we talked about this in the last time, having apartments compliable with ADA requirements, things like that. You want a certain number, this is a small project again, certainly we're going to need to have one unit that's ADA compliant. But we can make that a minimum criteria again.
Well, hang on, Brooke, I'm gonna come to Haley. She had one up a couple minutes ago. Haley?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the language in the RFP right now specifically notes interior storage and temperature controlled storage, but doesn't make a note about whether it's a basement or, I mean, it's interior, but it doesn't have something specific, but we can change it. Is that what people are thinking?
I think to the previous point Brooke made, you stay away from the specificity.
Yeah, so saying interior storage, is that fine with what
I
people
would
are?
think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, just
Tucker?
wanted to make sure.
I agree with that. I just wanted to clarify something that Dave said there, make sure the board is aware. We do not have final say on the design. That's the HDC and the planning board. The design is something that's part of how we evaluate the project, I suppose, but we do not approve the design.
Thank you for the clarification. Vicki, my one question is the lease, the ground lease is both assignable by the town to a new entity, and is it by the tenant? Or the, not, I shouldn't say the tenant, how does the entity that wins the RFP reassign the property in the future? And what's that process?
So generally, what happens is you're going to get, well, depending upon who the award winner is, and depending upon where they get their money from, determines how complicated it gets. But for the most part, they just can't go and assign this lease. Okay, they would have to come to the town for approvals before they can do that. And sometimes, depending upon the circumstances of the financing and who they are, will determine what kind of terms we build into this document in order to be able to allow them to assign it without our consent. For instance, sometimes there are LLCs, and if they want to assign it to an affiliate, they request that they can do so without our consent. There's a number of factors that enter into it. For the most part, though, I would say generally, they have to come to the town in order to be able to assign this ground lease. And we can carve out exceptions to that as we see fit.
And what about the town's ability, if a land trust gets off the ground, and the town's ability to transfer the deed and the lease to another entity? I'm assuming it's a land trust, but whatever the case may be.
So generally, we do have rights to be able to assign. Again, some of this is going to be dependent upon their financing, so we may have to end up getting approvals in order to be able to assign, say, to a land trust. I'm not sure whether that would enter into it. I'd have to really go back and look and see if there are any exceptions for us to be able to do that. Okay.
I just don't want to exclude those opportunities by not thinking about it in advance.
Right, and we can certainly negotiate this ground lease. It's not something that is hard and fast. And so what I will do is when I'm drafting a version of this to attach, I'll make sure that it gives us some flexibility to be able to assign it to a land trust or other town entity or board. I think that would get us far. Okay.
Okay. Brooke?
And Vicki, I'm just curious if somebody comes through with an ownership proposal, So basically, I'm assuming it would get drafted as condominiums, and that the land in a condominium scenario is a shared, is that this being a ground lease does not preclude this or make it impossible for someone to do a home ownership situation with this, right? It's a little more complex.
So you want the person to be, the entity to be able to purchase the property from?
No, what I'm saying is if say Habitat for Humanity is the winning bidder, their model is ownership units. So they would be selling off these dwelling units to individual property owners. And then there would be this land lease underneath that. It just gets a little complicated. I just didn't know whether that would preclude ownership under a land lease model.
So you're correct that most likely it would have to be a condo, because otherwise the only other way to do that would be to create separate lots, which you're really not able to do when, you know, here. So you would. So what would end up happening, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is the lessee of the ground lease would then create a condominium, which would, the land would be owned by a condominium association. But they're not owning the land and fee, they're actually getting a lease to the land and fee. I think that would be kind of complex for financing purposes, perhaps. I'm not sure how you know, the lenders will view that, depending upon who they go to.
Definitely not an easy one, but it seems we're into the weeds of the legality of the title. So we're gonna leave that one to you, Vicky, and I'm gonna come to Ken. Ken? You're on mute, Ken.
Sorry, I've got to jump off because I got to Zoom with Libby to try and figure out how to solve Baxter Road. So this has been a good meeting from jumping into the fire, I think. Thanks.
Good luck. Brooke?
So, not to beat a dead horse here, but I just want to make sure we don't want to only make this, if the home ownership piece is going to be so legally complex as to be impossible, should we preclude it from the RFP is really the point of my question. Should we make it a rentals only situation? Right?
Or offer an ownership model that's not a ground lease, that it's transferred.
Or you could leave it that it could be either a lease or a purchase.
Yeah, I think
up to the developer to decide how they want to proceed.
Yeah, I think we should leave that in. Yeah.
Tucker?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously doing a lot of work in the rental area. There's a lot more to do. This is a relatively small site. I think we want to leave ownership as an option for this site. And obviously it's incumbent upon the party who might put in the application to figure out that it works, or the proposal, I should say, that it works within their structure.
I think you just leave that line rental or purchase, and we move on from there. So we don't have an actionable voting item because we're going to see some edits. You're going to come back to us, Vicky, and then we'll pass this on to select board once we've voted on it. And Brooke, you can prepare the board that it's coming for future discussion. Vicky, do you have more specific questions for us on your list?
No, I think that pretty much covers most of the questions that I had.
Okay.
So we would, yeah, sorry, thank you, Brian. We would have a completed version for the next trust meeting, which I don't think is until October 18th-ish. And we would then be teeing up the select board now that that is coming for the first meeting after we meet for their approval, such that it basically could go immediately following that meeting. Does that make sense to everyone and so forth? And so I think that we want to make our changes to the document as soon as is practical, so that we also can get it to Brian Turbott's office, the procurement side, to look at before we take it back up at our next meeting. I just kind of wanted to go through the game plan.
I like it.
Mhm.
So Haley, we'll carry this to the October 18th meeting date.
Okay,
Um,
and Vicky will send me, you'll work on it and then you'll send it to me, Vicky, and then I can send it
Yes.
to Brian and get that. Okay,
Yes,
sounds good.
okay.
So with that, we'll move to item 11, year-round housing restrictions discussion. This is the beginning of the title is possible warrant article. So I'm going to look to somebody to kind of define this conversation a little bit for us. Tucker, maybe.
Damn it, I was hoping not to be picked.
Oh, I'll go to Brooke. She just
All
put her
right,
hand
good.
up. Okay, Brooke, you're it.
Okay, so one of the things that's being discussed a lot around in my conversations around in the community and so forth is the idea of what a year-round deed restriction looks like. And this has been a phrase that's been bandied about with regard to Surfside Crossing. It's been something
Payment
we've
assistance
talked-
program. There's like
Yeah,
a million.
just it's a thread that runs through a lot of things, and my basic understanding is that we cannot finance something that does not have an affordable an income level restriction attached to it because of our mandate. However, is there a way to codify a year-round occupancy type of deed restriction that could be used in the private sector, absent income restrictions, and or in concert with income restrictions in projects that we support financially in different areas, is the way I would sort of present this concept. And should we take the lead on, does it need to go to town meeting, but should the trust take the lead on bringing something like this forward for the community to utilize as we develop more deed restricted year-round housing, even at a market rate level of some sort that doesn't involve public funding.
So we've talked about the creation of the restriction concept in the past, of an actual written restriction. I think Vicky may be working on that in the background. I think part of what you may be saying or talking about may exist already in definitions as related to the housing covenant program, right? Because we need to define what year-round occupancy or means. So I would challenge us to kind of extract where that definition is now, and does it meet the concept? And to your point about the income levels, it's probably just a blank line, right? Within both of those definitions, or the definition and or the restriction. So if we're applying it, you write it in. If somebody else is applying it, they can leave it blank and it becomes market, or they put an income restriction on it. So I would like to see as much of this as possible, as fast as possible, personally. I just am not sure that I understand how it applies to being a warrant article. That's where I'm confused. So with that, I'll come to Dave, and then I'll go to Rima, and then I'll ask for my question to be answered from Vicky. So Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I think like this is a very complex question, right? Because for one, is this something that the land trust could deal with? Or is that going to be tied to income restrictions as well?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to two different things, David's, right? Like what does the community want to define as year-round, whether it's income restricted or not? And then at what level is there a year-round restricted free market being above 240%? And are we interested in change? And then if it is a restriction that exists that comes via this entity, are we interested in raising our income level to the 240?
Okay, yeah, I
I
mean,
think I said that right.
listen, I think that this is an important tool moving forward to preserve local neighborhoods, to preserve affordability. It's, I guess it's how we do it because, for instance, Sparks Ave, which we're working on and planning right now, is we want him to restrict all the housing to year round. So it's a tool in that sense. But also, I think we need to look forward at figure ways on how to buy these restrictions from people, in some sense. So I just think it's a super complex.
I think I agree that it's complex, but I think if we chunk it out, it's not.
Well, we need to chunk it out. I think this is
Yeah.
an important tool, period.
So what's the agreement on the definition of what year round is? Step one. Step two, what does the legal restriction written look like? And then within it, if it's a boilerplate restriction, where do you apply the income level? And then to that is when the hard part gets to, like when you start paying for them, it's basically a sliding scale of cost as far as what the level is. Is it 240, 150, 100, 80? Where's the affordability restriction? And then the subsidy grows depending on how deep the affordability restriction is. And so I would say we are far from the buying phase. We've got a handful of months of work to get the first two things understood and appropriately defined. Being, how do we want to define year round? Is it the same as the housing covenant program? Is it different than that? That's a good baseline to start with.
I would say it's the same as the housing covenant program. It would not make sense to have two different definitions with two different subsidized, or not, I mean,
I don't know. I think we should put that in front of us. Like if the year-round person that wants to live and own here year-round and is prepared to restrict their property, but then wants to spend, the winter in Florida may not be considered a year-round person by that definition. We need to put the definition in front of us and see how we want to
agree.
Apply it. Tucker?
So, I mean, I think, as you said, Vicky may be working on something in the background that we talked about before. We can, as part of the discussion, put in front of everyone the covenant definition. Of course, maybe we look at the definitions that other communities are using, like Vail has their Indeed program for this type of thing. I think Jackson Hole may have something similar. So let's look at and draw from what we like, leave the rest. The reason I raised my hand in the first place was I think the agenda item for this may have gotten conflated with regard to a warrant article that we've talked in a prior meeting about. I think Vicky has brought up wanting to, I'll use the word codify our work with regard to income level, I guess beyond, what we presently operate under. So I think that is an important thing. I realize it's tangential to this particular topic today, but I think we really want to have at our next meeting what it is that we need to do there, if anything, so that that can be part of the warrant this year.
So if I may, Tucker, if I understand from previous meeting, we need to change our charter and have a vote at town meeting to raise our income level. Wait, Rima knows it. She read it since the last meeting. Floor is yours. You're on mute. Waving furiously at me.
I know. No, that's why I asked that we add the warrant article discussion to this topic, because it seems from all the discussion that we have that step one is to raise our income levels, and which would be, changing our enabling act. So I was thinking, let's start there and, go up to whatever is going to most help the community. And
What
then
is the
the covenant that much is just the covenant level then rises to an income level that's going to cover more people.
what is, Tucker or Vicky, our allowable high side of the threshold for us to be able to work with it? Go ahead, Vicky.
So there's not a specific number that's right now in there, and that's part of the problem. It's really, geared to quote unquote affordable housing. And then we're limited by, depending upon where we get our money from, if it comes from CPC or it comes from some other source, that dictates how we can use the money. So I think it would behoove us at this, behoove you at this point to consider actually trying to go to a level that you think addresses as many people as you and income levels as you want to try to get to. And if that's 240, that's a number that you could try to go for. And that's also right now in what was the latest version of the transfer fee bill. They were looking at 240. So that's something that we can consider, and we can put a warrant article together. I think that would certainly assist you. The other thing I just want to say about the definitions of year-round and things like that is, I think we need to have an overview of all these different definitions. There's, if you look at the code, I mean, it is incredibly confusing where you have all these restrictions. I mean, there's the qualified family restriction, family member restriction, there's the covenant program, there's all these competing programs. And so I think, if we're going to try to carve something out, I think we need to try to work within what's there and not contradict it.
Okay, that's helpful. So if I can make so just as a note on pricing, today at this moment, there are 99 listings under contract on Nantucket, and the average of the 99 is $3,522,000, and the median is $2,675,000. So it's an interesting just item to note. If I, Tucker, I'm going to come to you in 1 second, but I'd like to break this out into two actionable items. One, is the board prepared to whether have a consensus or a meeting of the minds, or empower town council to develop changes to our enabling legislation to bring us in line with the numbers within the housing bank bill? Is kind of my request.
So Brian, before we go there, can I just feel this is important. So
Great.
up until this point, we sort of have been advised that, we can effectively define moderate for ourselves, that we, are in our charter, we serve low to moderate. And from time to time, we have modified that definition to be able to serve higher percentage AMI households. And funding has come from town meeting with specific limitations that have been, say, ever increasing, presently up to the 200% AMI level. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, I'm all in favor for making a change or codifying anything we need to codify, but I guess I'm just trying to understand what has changed that we now need to do something in order to operate the way that we have already been operating.
So it's your understanding that we can modify the level up to the 240 based on the
Well,
past
I don't know. I
experience?
don't know if 240, crossing 200 is a magic thing, or so. I'm just trying to understand the rationale behind making the I'm all in favor of making the change or doing whatever we think is the right thing to do. But I'm just trying to understand what's changed that we're thinking about doing this.
I on a legal perspective, I have no idea, but I think on the momentum,
We're deploying monies right now at levels up to 200% AMI. So I guess that's what I'm trying to understand.
I think my general impression is it's more in line with the conversation related to a year-round restriction and being able to fund those restrictions at some point in the future to a place more in the free market value. So if we feel that that's up to 200 or it goes to 240 or 250 or some 300, I don't even know. But I think the question was, do you see a path for us to get there without going through the effort of changing the enabling legislation is the question. So with that, I'll come to Vicky.
So I have not found a definition that has 240 as being low and moderate income. Okay, I just haven't. Now, with the enabling legislation out there, perhaps that will sort of account for it. But I think what it does do is it addresses the, whether you want to cross a certain line of over 200 and make that a group of a population that you want to still try to help versus staying at a lower income level. And like you said, if you're going to try to purchase these restrictions and people, I could see people wanting a higher level of income above 240. I think they would find that very restrictive if they're going to be.
Do you think 240 in those situations would be too low? Is that what you're saying, Vicky?
No, would be better than 200.
Than the 200 or 180 or 175 or okay.
So it's our desire to go above 200 that is sort of the motivator to do this. That's all I'm trying to understand.
And the only reason that I clue in on the 240 figure is because it fell back to the housing bank bill's number.
Yeah.
And is in line with that. So
it's very logical. Yeah.
If you tell me it's 250, let's go to 250. Like if you tell me it's 238, I'll go, like, it doesn't matter. But I think when we get that passed, it'd be nice to be ready to work with it to the fullest extent that it's available. Brooke?
So I think to Tucker's question, so to date, we've been able to define for ourselves what low to moderate income is. And Vicky, if I'm hearing you correctly, we're getting to a level that might not be acceptable by self-definition without changing the enabling legislation, because that's the way we've operated, right? We keep ramping it up as needed as we go to higher income levels by this self-definition. But are we out of the range of being able to define it ourselves that way? And you're saying legally it makes more sense to codify it in our enabling legislation.
So even now at 200%, there's really, you've decided to go to that level because of the circumstances on Nantucket. It's different than other communities. I think if you went to other people from other communities and said that 200% AMI is low to moderate income, they would disagree with you. So I think it offers some protection, first of all, too, for the town to be able to say, this is what we're able to fund under our trust. You know, we're getting to the point where, I mean, DHCD understands, but their definition of low and moderate income is very different. And CPC definitions of low and moderate income is very different. And then you're sitting here in Nantucket with 200 and above, you know, so I think it offers a clearer definition for the trust to be able to go to that level and not worry that, gee, we're exceeding what our limits are. And if you look at General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 55C, which is the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust statute, that too, you know, it doesn't define a specific amount, but it talks about low and moderate income. And, you know, if you go by the definitions in the CPC, Nantucket is certainly exceeding that. So I think you may be at a crossroads where it may be beneficial to include an amount up to that amount.
Okay, so I guess we're at the place of cooking this idea a little bit, then bringing it back to the table on October 18th as a actionable votable item to see if we want to put together a warrant article change in our enabling legislation at that point. So that's part one of this line statement. Part two, looking to definitions. And I guess for that meeting, can we put together the grouping of competing definitions, as you mentioned, Vicky, that will help us find a path to what year-round something means, whether it's occupancy, residency, I guess, et cetera. So then we can evolve that a little bit and then find, and that may lead us to wanting to do working with the planning department and creating a house cleaning on the definition of within the code of what we're looking for year-round to mean.
Mhm.
And I see, and before I come to you real quick, on that, do any board members want to evolve those? Okay, Anne, for your input.
Thank you. Well, just with regards to the year-round residency discussion, with the local initiative program and the deed restrictions that are on the Richmond Company properties, for example, they cite principal residence as being the year-round occupancy criteria. And it's a gray area. So I would advise against using that term, principal residence, because it really, as far as I can see, there isn't any kind of months definitively that you need to prove that you occupy here. Whereas for us, you know, with the covenant program, if you say 10 out of 12 months per year, I can ask for things like your utility bills and your bank statements and actual proof that you're here 10 out of 12. Whereas with principal residence, you could go off for 4 months or however many months. And I can't, you know, you could be staying somewhere else, but this is still your principal residence. So it's a little loosey-goosey there.
And is your definition in the E code of Nantucket, or is it a definition that you're maintaining?
It's in the deed restriction. Or are you saying for the LIP, the principal residence, or the 10 out of 12 months residence?
10 out of 12.
That is that in our deed restriction, or I think it's in our regulations, but I will find out.
Would you circulate that to Haley when you can?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Vicky?
So it's correct that these LIP programs and Richmond, you know, their deed restriction, I mean, their restriction as to principal place of residence is what they use. And that comes from DHCD. The DHCD, that's their standard, is if you're going to get have this affordable unit, it needs to be a quote unquote principal place of residence. And that's where the vagueness comes from. So if we want to be more specific about that, like Ian said, perhaps 10 to 12 months, is a better way to go than restricting it to principal place of residence.
All right, so we're going to bring both of these forward as separate items, Haley, for the next meeting. All right, I think we've worked through 11. We'll move to 12. Dr. Dickler, award discussion. Brooke, did you put this one on or? No. Tucker, you did? Okay.
Yeah, so this is just, we had, the board will recall, we had initially discussed at the time of Howard's passing, wanting to do something that not only would honor Howard, but also, and his spirit and contributions, but, also give an opportunity for the board to recognize, call it citizen contributors to the work on housing on a presumed annual basis. And so what we were hoping for today was to get a board member or two to work with Haley and I around forming criteria and a process for nomination and determination of recipient, that we could present that to the board at the October meeting, get your all's input, and hopefully be in a position to move forward and have a nomination and selection process this fall to coincide with perhaps making an award at the end of the year in keeping with the season, if you will. So if there's a board member or two that is interested in this, would love to have them to work with Haley and I.
Tucker, this is great. Thank you very much. Rima, your hand just went up.
Yeah, I'm willing to work on that with you guys.
Your game. Okay, awesome.
And Chantal's hand is up, I think.
Oh, sweet. Chantal.
Yay.
Is that a yes, you're in, Chantal?
Yeah, can you take your microphone up? Okay, that's a thumbs up. Yes. All right.
Excellent. Thank you both.
Okay. That was enough of a affirmative commitment. Sweet.
Perfect. We'll follow up with you both. Thank you.
I love that that's got legs. Monthly communication piece. I think Tucker mentioned this to me.
I'm going to let Haley handle this. Yep.
So we were talking about, how to continue to get the word out there. We had that great state of housing workshop, but to really have something that's more regular that people can look at and see, this is what the AHG is doing, this is what's going on with housing, to really, keep everybody in the loop. So similar to how there's a newsletter that Libby puts together for the town, we are talking about doing a newsletter for the housing office here. And this would be quarterly, so every 3 months to start. And it would essentially kind of be a roundup of what's been going on with the housing office and the trust in those last 3 months. So we would have things like, the number of CCAPs and CFAPs and the overall amount of money awarded in that quarter. We could have updates on new projects, whether there have been RFPs issued or anyone has been selected, new developers, things are on the ground, photos of newly acquired properties, things of that nature. And then we would be able to also put in other news. So, if, for example, I know Housing Nantucket has Sandpiper lottery coming up. So that's something that we could include to, keep people abreast of opportunities that they can apply for. And then it would have our meeting dates for anyone who wants to join us, as well as, potential other news. So Florencia is working on that with me. She's going to do a format for that, and I'm going to help her with content. And I wanted to just give people a rundown of what to expect, and also see if there was anything specific that I may have missed that you think would be good to have in this communication piece.
Government to Brooke, then to Tucker.
Haley, one thing would be to consistently have links to the different companies and organizations that have applications, that standing applications and waiting lists. So like a link to Housing Nantucket's ready to rent list, and, you know, find out from Richmond Great Point if they're accepting applications. Is there a link that people can go to fill one out, et cetera, et cetera. And that sort of be a standing thing in every newsletter.
Meg?
How are you going to build a subscriber list to this newsletter?
Great question. So Florencia is going to start by sending it out to the large list that we have for everything related to the town. And then people have the opportunity to say, yes, I want to opt in to hear about housing. And of course, we'll include, you know, the major housing players on the island so that they can tell people who may be subscribed to them or maybe following them to get the word out about that as well. I think that's where we'll start. If people have other ideas, then just let us know.
Any non-for-profit or that you could share it with originally to ask to see if their list would want to opt in, I think would be a great place to start. The community foundation, they would start there first.
I was going to offer that if you send, I don't know your bandwidth and how this would work out for you. Newsletters are tricky. Hardly anyone reads them, and there's so freaking many of them out there. But if you had the bandwidth to do a social media page as well, like an Instagram or a Facebook, and you could do more regular posts there, and then you could put the link in your bio there, then that square that you use to promote your newsletter, you could share with other nonprofits, and I'd be happy to spread the word to the community foundation about the list.
Haley, the one, as far as content, the one jumping off spot that feels like to me a lot of work happens around, and it over the last few years it keeps getting better, but a place to evolve from is the reports that we deliver to the FinCom on an annual basis in preparation of those meetings. So I think if you take the last one of those out and then work with some of the content that exists there, it's a good building block opportunity. Tucker?
Great.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sorry, can you mute Haley? Sorry. I was going to say, I hesitate to use the word newsletter because we do not want this to be copy intensive. Just like Meg was saying, people get barraged with newsletters. This is I think the term that maybe is more applicable is a dashboard. And so it's sort of a quick way for people to be able to get in tune with what's happening. We can definitely include the types of links that Brooke is talking about. What we want it to be sort of short and punchy, and that people might actually look at it when they receive it. So that's like the format that Brian, you just mentioned that we used for FinCom last year, which I think was very effective. You know, it's really heavy on the visuals and bullet points and that sort of thing. So I think that's the direction that we're intending to go with this.
Okay. Haley, does that give you some good direction? Go ahead, Haley.
Yeah, and also say to Meg's point that Florencia had asked us if we would do, if the town would, she wants to do 2 posts per month, so every other week, specific to what's going on with housing. So when that item is ready, that could be it, but we could also talk about things in real time as well.
Meg?
And you mentioning Florencia, that just also reminds me, I'd love if everyone would consider posting, dual posting at least in English and Spanish. I think it would be a really nice piece to do the diversity, equity, inclusion, and at least addressing the Spanish speaking population on the island.
I don't mean to complicate, but I think if you're going to cover Spanish, you should cover Portuguese as well.
We can definitely ask her about that and what her bandwidth is too, because I know she's talked about that a little bit of translations and all of that services.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Any more on that one? Seeing none, we'll move our way down to potentially your end. Other business, upcoming meetings. We've talked about this throughout the meeting, October 18th, 12:30. Any objections? Seeing none, we'll close that meeting item. Any other business? Vicky?
So in response to the last meeting, I did take a look about leasing. I don't know if you want to discuss that now or not, but I just wanted to let you know that I have looked at that issue.
Forgive me, I'm not keeping up well enough, Vicky. The last meeting on leasing.
So we talked about potentially leasing AK Diamond space.
Oh, yes.
So it's up, do you want to talk about that now or later, another meeting?
I think that's exec session.
Okay,
I do believe that's where that conversation has that.
okay.
Okay, board comments. Seeing no board comments, item number, Brooke, is that a board comment or you're jumping in on this item? You're jumping in on this item. Let it rip.
Okay, I make a motion to adjourn the open session to move to executive session for the purpose of considering the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property where an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, not to return to open session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rima by roll call, Dave Iverson,
Aye.
John Tom Murphy,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Hi.
Brian Sullivan's and I. We'll see you there.